Hello, BookTube. I made a video a little while ago about laying out your extensive list of obligations for BookTube for October and November. And I wanted to make a video today centering on a couple of those for November. Because we still have time. We're halfway through the month of October, so we still have time until November starts. I wanted to get you all thinking about these things ahead of time, because preparation matters. And the first of the November things that I want to talk about is NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, where in the month of November, we all get together with hundreds of thousands of people from around the world and write a novel in the month of November. It's a lot. It's a big thing, 50,000 words. So it's 2,000 words a day, or 1,600 words a day, and that's no small commitment. But the whole idea of NaNoWriMo is that if it's not now, then when? There'll never be a perfect time. And as daunting as it is to write that much in the month of November, as I have said in previous years, you can remove a large amount of the sting from that obligation by plotting now. I know, the crowds of NaNoWriMo are split down the middle between plotters and pantsers. Pantsers is short for seat of the pants, people who do not plot. They might have an idea or a character or a setting or something like that, but they don't plot out what's going to happen from day to day. I am here to tell you that usually doesn't work. Feels like a fun lark for the first day or two, but if you don't have something committed, if you don't have something invested into the story, you almost certainly will not finish. You will come a cropper in day 3 or day 13 and not feel like going any further, and because there's no weight of an expectation, you'll stop. Now, I know that the Annals of NaNoWriMo have many examples of pantsers who didn't do that, who have had a wonderful time, who've done it for years and succeeded in reaching their word goal by pantsing. And there are also some rather famous examples of authors who went on to be published, who started out by being pantsers on NaNoWriMo. But nevertheless, my house, my rules. And I say that the way to do NaNoWriMo is to plot. And that brings us to now, to the middle of October, because there's a series of videos going around YouTube called Preptober. Excuse me. Some of the best of them are on our very own Ben Sanders channel. I'll leave a link to them down below, where you use the month of October to prep for NaNoWriMo. That makes perfect sense. It makes obvious sense. The thing you want to do, you are not allowed to write before the stroke of midnight on the first day of November. But you are allowed to plot and plan and whatnot. And you can do that to your heart's content. And that takes a huge amount of the work out of the month of November itself. It's still a staggering amount of work, but it takes a huge amount of the work out if you know what you're going to do. In fact, some plotters that I know in NaNoWriMo, I've been doing NaNoWriMo for years now, and I love it. And some plotters that I know not only plot out every single detail of what they're going to write in November, but they plot out what they're going to write on each day. They make a total plan of it, so that day 1, I need to write my 1,664 words or whatever has to include these 2 things. Day 2, it has to include these 3 things in this order. You can do that. You can plot that out to your heart's content. And my urging to you today is that you should do that. Since you are all going to participate in NaNoWriMo with me, you are all going to be writing buddies with me. The way to make that happen in your busy, busy lives is to plot now. So, take a few minutes and think about what you want to write for NaNoWriMo. Then once you've thought about what you want to write, what do you want to do? Do you want to write a revenge story? Do you want to write an autobiographical piece of fiction? You shouldn't. You shouldn't, but if you want to. Do you want to write Star Trek fan fiction? Do you want to write a seafaring adventure? Do you want to write something with horror elements to it? Figure out what you want to do in general terms. Then figure out the specific details. Where does it take place? What are the main protagonists like? Is there a villain? What's the villain like? Just sit down and do that. Maybe with a pad of paper in front of you, not a computer. Don't use a computer for this, or you'll be surfing porn in no time and you won't ever come back. Use a piece of paper to jot out the rough outlines, the rough details. And don't think about what you can make work. Think about what you want to write. If your story for NaNoWriMo doesn't start there, then I would say that it's doomed. Start with what you want to write. later on, when you're a professional writer and someone comes to you, some publisher or educational firm or whatever comes to you and says, here's a contract, will you write about the gravitational pull of planet Neptune, and you don't want to, but there's money on the table, fine. Then is a time for you to write about things you don't want to write about. But until then, for NaNoWriMo, pick something that you want to write about. So think about that. What do you want to write? Not a question of what you want other people to read. What is it that you want to be writing for the whole of November? Because there are going to be, no matter how many write-ins you go to, no matter how many writing buddies you have, there are going to be many long, dark moments of the soul during November where you feel completely alone because you are completely alone. Where the only thing around joining you in your writing toil of getting from A to B in the plot that you have to do that day is a needy dog or an indifferent cat. But there are going to be moments that no one can carry you through. And the thing that's going to get you through those moments is wanting to write what you're writing. So think about that first, today. Do it today. Don't put it off. Because you have to have all this nailed down and in place before November starts. Or you won't have a chance, unless you're going to pants. But think about what you want to write and how you want it to break down. And if you do that, you will find, once you start, that you end up doing that all the time. You really do. You'll be in line at the bank or at the grocery store, and you will find yourself thinking, okay, well, I said that my main character lives in a castle, but what's the castle like? I mean, how big is it? How many rooms does it have? What's it like? How many ways are there in and out? Where does my character sleep in the castle? And what is that room like? You will find yourself thinking of that, and that's great. That is the total godlike creative position of someone writing fiction. If you've never experienced it, you really owe it to yourself to experience it. Those of you, the people out there that on BookTube and elsewhere who have successfully written short stories or, God forbid, whole novels all the way to the end, will be able to tell you there is nothing like that feeling of exhilaration. Nothing. And it's free. It doesn't require anything. It doesn't require that you become Olympically trained so that you can take the highest mountains in a downhill ski. It doesn't require anything like that. You can make yourself feel that. And once you do, you'll keep doing it. There's a reason why so many people do NaNoWriMo many times. Once you start to feel that complete sense of power, you'll like it. But in order to get there, you have to clear the brushwork. So what you need to do in the next 2 weeks is decide what you want to write, shape the story, populate the story, sketch out in your mind or on paper the characters involved. Don't write anything. You can character sketch, you can scenery sketch, you can list things, but don't write any prose until the stroke of midnight on November 1st. But you can do all of that brush clearing ahead of time. And one of the points I wanted to make in this video is that you can include me in that brush clearing, absolutely, if I can help, to get you to a place where you feel ready to start on November 1st. Then I want to help. So if I remember, I always forget. But I think I forget because so many of you know it already. But if I remember, I will leave my email down below. But I will also leave my NaNoWriMo link. I think my page is up now. I still haven't. I have many candidates for NaNoWriMo. I haven't decided which one I want to do because there are 2 other long-term writing projects that I'm involved in, and one of them is fiction. And they don't count. I'm not including them in NaNoWriMo. I'm doing them in addition to NaNoWriMo. So I haven't decided yet what my Nano project is going to be. So I haven't set up a new page for that. But I will link to my older ones so that you can find me there. You know where I am. You can see my older novels. I urge you to do this, especially if you've never tried it before. Especially if you think, I would love to, but I've got the wife, and I've got the kids, and I've got the grandmother, and I've got the trots, and I've got the job, and I've got especially if you think that. If you think now's not the time. I do want to do it someday, but now's not the time. I especially urge you to try it if that's true, because that time is never going to come. And I think on some level you know that as well as I do. But one way or another, I want to stress 2 things about this particular November event. Then we'll move on to the next one. The 2 things I want to stress about NaNoWriMo are that now, Preptober, is the time for you to be doing everything but the writing. The writing's going to be hard enough in November, so take as much burden off yourself now as possible. Come up with your plot. Come up with a working title. Come up with a cast of characters. Come up with what you want to tell? What kind of story do you want to tell? Do you want to completely destroy someone? Do you want to completely destroy someone and then have them recover? Do you want to celebrate someone with no destruction at all? What kind of story do you want to tell? That's part number 1 of Preptober. Part number 2 is involve me if it will help. Absolutely, involve me if it will help. We can email all day long. I'm online all the time except from midnight until dawn. So, but all day I'm ready to talk about NaNoWriMo, to text back and forth, to Voxer back and forth. You name it if you need it. And then that's NaNoWriMo. That's one of the 2 events for November. And the other event for November that I want to prep you for here is Nonfiction November, which is in its 4th year. It is an epic nonfiction read-along that Olive at A Book Olive and Gemma at Nonfic Books do every year to celebrate nonfiction on what, as Olive puts it, is a very fiction-heavy platform. And BookTube is mostly fiction. At least that has changed from mostly YA fiction, but it's still mostly fiction. And again, Olive has said this for a few years now, that one of the reasons for that is that nonfiction gets a bad rap. People think of it as boring or dry. And that is, in my opinion, that is mostly the result of nonfiction being taught poorly in schools. So the first time you encounter it, you do encounter something that's boring and dry. You encounter something that your 30-something teacher likes. What your 30-something teacher, in most cases, is not being a good enough teacher to think what you might like. And as a result, you encounter nonfiction that isn't ready, that you aren't ready for, or that isn't for you, or that isn't pitched for you, and it leaves a bad taste in your mind. Nonfiction November is designed to counter that. Nonfiction November is designed to encourage you to read more nonfiction, and to read nonfiction that will make you smile, that will sing to you. Believe me. If you watch this channel for any length of time, you know that that nonfiction is out there. It exists in an infinite variety, which is something you can't say about the made-up stories. They do not exist in an infinite variety. There's scarcely a fictional story you will read in any given year. If you stick to the new releases like I do, there's scarcely one that you will read in an entire year where you get more than 20 pages without thinking, yeah, I've seen this before. That almost never happens. Whereas nonfiction doesn't even have to think about that. Nonfiction is not dealing with dramatic templates. It's just telling nonfiction stories. So even if you have seen someone write about the Battle of Agincourt, or the Battle of Britain, or the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, even if you've seen someone write on that exact same subject before, the originality is off the table. Originality doesn't need to happen. It's a great bonus when it does, but it will come from the writer's ability to marshal sources, to read between the lines in sources. It will be thrilling, either way. And Nonfiction November is designed to celebrate that. And just recently, Olive made a video about the categories. There are always categories for Nonfiction November. And there are 4 this time around. Of course, she stresses that you can just ignore them. The whole point of Nonfiction November is for you to read some nonfiction if you read none, and to read more nonfiction if you read some, but not to follow any of these things. But they're really neat in a weird kind of way. The first one, I presume for the first week, is pastime and pastime. And if you, some juxtaposition of those two, pastime or pastime. And if you hear that first juxtaposition, you think, boy, this Olive person sounds like a major class nerd. Well, I'm afraid there's nothing in the other 3 that's going to disprove. The next one, number 2, is self and shelf. Number 3 is wander and wonder. And number 4 is micro and macro. So these are not obviously themes or times or places or people. Instead, these are concepts. And Olive mentions in her video, I'll leave a link to it down below. She mentions in her video that one of the joys she has is seeing how inventive people get. What do these words conjure in your mind? When you're looking at your bookshelf of nonfiction, what do they conjure in your mind? There's a lot of leeway for invention. There's a lot of leeway. These will cover almost anything. So I thought I would mention those. Olive's going to make a video later on in which she sort of talks more about these juxtapositions, gives you a clearer idea of some of the things you can and cannot do. I wait that eagerly. But in the meantime, I I wanted to revive this reminder to you that Nonfiction November is right around the corner. And I am going to participate, of course. I absolutely love Nonfiction November. I love nonfiction. I cheer it and praise it and talk about it all the time on this channel. I love the Nonfiction November event, but one extra wrinkle that I was thinking of is that in addition to doing all of these prompts and talking about the event, I might also offer to send you all some nonfiction. Like I just said, if these prompts are designed to guide your thinking when you're looking at your nonfiction shelves. Well, if you don't have a nonfiction shelf, if you don't have much nonfiction and you don't have much access to it, then sing out in the comments field. Let me know. If you live in America, I should stress. I have about had my fill of sending books on a whim to rural New Zealand. I've about had my fill of postage for a $1 book being $55 and not getting to its recipient, and I don't get that money back. But if you live in America and you have a subject or a person or something, I see a lot of books in the course of a month. A lot more than a normal person does. And most of the books I see are either free, because I know someone who runs the charity basement of a church, or they're dirt cheap. So if you want me to help find you nonfiction books, and then feel free in the comments field to let me know what your interests are, general or specific, and I'll do what I can. Because we still have time. We still have time for me to get books into the hands of a dozen or so of you, and that would be fun in its own right. One way or another, I can certainly make recommendations, even if I can't get you the book. So that's the purpose of this video, is to encourage you in two different events. One is gigantic, it straddles the whole world, and one is smaller. NaNoWriMo is a gigantic world-straddling event. Thousands and thousands of people take place. Some have been doing it forever, and you really get into the spirit of it when you do it more than once. It's a tremendous feeling. And Nonfiction November is an institution of its own. It's a little bit awkward. Just today, Harriet Rosie made it clear that I think there are some newcomers on BookTube who started an event of their own called Nonfiction November, not knowing that there was an older and established Nonfiction November that had been going on forever, which is, let that be a warning to you kids out there. Do a little research. Always. Before anything, do a little research. I'm hoping that we can just incorporate the two. Why not do that? But one way or another, Nonfiction November is also now about as established as events on BookTube get. And it's going to be a fun time. More people participate in it every year than the year before. And Olive pulls out all the stops. I mean, there's a Goodreads group with tons of discussions and prompts and whatnot. There's a Twitter now for Nonfiction November. There's just, it's an independent thing on its own. So much fun. And let's be honest, needed. Right? It's needed. BookTube grows all the time. I mean, there are dozens more new booktubers every week. But if you watch their videos, and I try to, most of them are talking about fiction, either new or old. Most of them are talking about fiction. Nonfiction is still a bit of an acquired taste, and that's a shame. And Nonfiction November works against that, so we shall see what kind of fun it is. I'm sure I'll be talking about it between now and then. But I wanted to make these two reminders for you, just because they're both right around the corner. Doesn't feel it, but they're right around the corner. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll leave all the apposite links down below. And I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.